Welcome, everyone.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Leila Rhodes and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining us here at Netcom Learning, a market leader in promoting lifelong learning, training, and talent development solutions. We are very excited to host today's webinar, Top 5 Adobe Illustrator Tips and Tricks to Boost Your Design Skills. And presenting today's topic is Mike Witherell. Mike has provided software training to thousands of graphic artists and has many years of practical hands-on design and production experience. Mike is also an Adobe community professional, is a moderator on the InDesign user forum, and a speaker at public events. Mike is a certified technical trainer and Adobe Certified Master Expert, ACE, in InDesign, InCopy, Acrobat, Photoshop, and Illustrator. Now, please bear in mind that this is just an overview of a very robust topic, and we do offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored towards your specific requirements. So if you're interested in a further discussion about those, you can make an appointment with our learning consultants through our website at www.netcomlearning.com at any time. Today's session is also being recorded, so you will get access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. Netcom Learning helps customers build an innovative learning organization by achieving a smarter workforce, adapting to change, and driving growth. We do this with a broad catalog of offerings, developing customized learning plans, and our global delivery capabilities. Since 1998, we have been empowering organizations with our managed learning services to help them reach optimal performance results and address challenges. We have 9 practice areas in which we specialize, and they encompass people, process, and technology training. Today's presentation is from the Design and Multimedia practice area. Netcom Learning offers a comprehensive training portfolio for design and multimedia courses, and our upcoming classes include various trainings on Introduction to Photoshop CC, Introduction to Illustrator CC, Illustrator CC combo training, and many more. And private training to teams is also available, and the learning plans can be customized to the specific needs of the audience. You can also access a variety of design and multimedia assets, such as our free 1-hour training, free on-demand training, and blogs by clicking on the available webinar handout. And these offerings can also be found with a simple search on our website at www.netcomlearning.com. In this webinar, we will explore and learn about how to wrap text into shapes and master creating 3D text, shapes, custom patterns, brushes, and more. Now, I just want to give you a quick overview of the logistics before we get started with the webinar today. To start with, you have the option to adjust the window size to your liking. You can simply hit the escape key to find the zoom button on the top left corner of your GoToWebinar viewer. Everyone has been muted except for our presenters, so you can feel free to submit any questions you have for the presenters in the questions panel, and we will address those at the end of the session today. Also, to get the best out of today's webinar, we've included the slides, courses we've talked about, and marketing assets in the handout section of the GoToWebinar viewer, and you can refer to those to get a better understanding of the topic. And now I am going to go ahead and pass the time over to Mike to present. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Leila. It's going to be my pleasure to show you. I hope you can see a blue screen of mine right now.
Not just yet.
Let's see if clicking that one message on the screen helps show a blue introductory screen there.
There we go.
Here's what I'm going to be just showing you some interesting things in Adobe Illustrator, a vector drawing program, the vector drawing program. This program is the great granddaddy of all the PostScript vector drawing programs. And its first version was in 1986, 87. And we've been working with this software a long time. It's loaded with a lot of features. No one perhaps knows everything that's in Illustrator because it has an amazing number of features in it. Now, what I'd like to do, though, is at least show you a few things. We're going to make seamless pattern fills, pattern brushes. We'll make scatter brushes. We'll play around a bit with 3D text and shape, and also warp text into interesting shapes. And I'm going to show you as many tips and tricks as I possibly can. I'm going to be moving a bit briskly. And so the first one is, let's try making pattern fills. Now, some of these things are not difficult to do, but Illustrator can be mysterious in really what do you do next. It actually does have some idiosyncrasies. But we're going to draw a shape in Illustrator and then put it in the swatches panel. And that's the part that a lot of people don't realize. And once there, we simply get it going or double click it to start to build a pattern fill. So we'll do that next. Having switched the screen here, I hope I'm presenting to you now the Illustrator screen. This is Adobe Illustrator 2021 version, part of the whole offering of the Creative Clouds of softwares. Now, let's focus in on just doing this repetitively so that you can get the sense of it. We're going to work with an object. So I'm going to zoom in on this red star. Pretend you drew a red star in Illustrator. You likely would have used the shape drawing tool, which is in the toolbox, lots of common shapes, but we drew a star. So pretend that you did draw that, but you want a star pattern fill. So what you work with is the swatches pattern. You simply drag the star or shape or whatever you drew into and drop it into the swatches panel to begin. Then you double click it. And this fires up a pattern generator, and it shows your star in the middle, but then it shows it according to the pattern options panel of Illustrator. It shows it in a grid. Now, you might like to name it red star. And you might like to change the grid patterning, perhaps in a way that shows it as a brick, or in other words, offset from its neighbor. And there are other patterns. And this is giving you a live preview. The grayed out is representing what it's going to build you. You can also do it in a hex pattern. And then finally, you can change the spacing of it by changing these number values. Width and height is this outline. It's a vector shape itself. Now, if I increase it by just using maybe the up arrow key, you can see it's pushing apart the width of the stars. And if you change the height up or down, greater or less, you can build the density of the pattern that you want. That's all there is to it, really. Up at the top, you would click Done in Illustrator. And one of the things that I frequently do by mistake is actually leave the object selected while I'm double clicking the pattern. I'm going to undo that with a couple of Control Z's. You can endlessly undo, or at least 50 or 100 undos. But what you really should do once you drag and drop it into swatches panel is you should remember, again, an idiosyncrasy, to deselect the object you're working on, because then when you double click it, it won't apply it while you're tinkering with it. But anyway, I'll redo that as red star. I'll change it to, say, a brick pattern, and I'll tighten it up just a little bit so that it's spaced tighter. And I'm pretending I love the pattern. Again, up at the top here in the information bar, we'll click Done. And then what would you do next? So I'm going to Control 0 or Command 0 to come out of here. And just go over to this shape and then see what the pattern looks like when I fill it. So I'll select this shape with the black selection tool of Illustrator and simply go over to the swatch panel and click to apply it. And there's your pattern. Let's do it again. I'm doing spacebar dragging to make another one. This time I'll select 2 stars and put those into the swatches panel just simply by dragging and dropping. And deselect it is a good idea before you double click it to edit this one. I'll name this one red and blue. And maybe we could set it up as a brick pattern. And I'm pretending I just love it. I'm going to click done and close up that pattern options panel. And let's see what this one looks like. We'll apply to this selected object that I previously drew to make it ready. And here again, in swatches is where you go to apply your fill patterns. Let's do it again. We're seeing slightly little different things as we go. An old school method that you don't really have to do anymore is you used to have to, in Illustrator, draw a square. It actually now supplies that square for you. But in an old school method, this still works. If you drew a no stroke, no fill square and sent it to back behind your 2 objects and selected all 3. Now you've got a silent spacing partner in that square that you drew. It's a vector shape too, but it has no color. You drag and drop this in. And now based on that square, that's the spacing pattern of it. I'll deselect, double click so you can see it. I'll call it red, blue, star. And again, maybe I'll arrange it as a brick pattern. Now, based on that square, which you drew, which you don't have to anymore, but you can still, it still works if you want to do it that way. But that is this width and height square right here. And again, having drawn it, you can also alter the width and height of that square. I'm pretending I'm satisfied with that. I'm going to click done. And it brings me out. And what does that look like? I'm pressing Control 0 or Command 0 and spacebar dragging to come over to this to see what it looks like. Here comes the swatches panel, 1 click. And the interesting effect here is it looks like 2 different color fills because it's really showing you half of the 1 star, half of the other as a pattern fill. Neat trick. But again, you could draw any shape you want. You might use the vector pen tool, the Bezier pen tool. Pretend you drew this off-shaped pentagon shape here. But again, if you draw something and drop it in to the swatches panel, then deselect it, then double-click your new swatch fill, you can see how it's patterning. I'll name it blue 5 sides. I'll change it around a little bit just because I can. I'll click done and have a look at what that looks like. Here comes the swatch where you access these ones that you've made, and you would click it here. So I'm pretending I love that, but wait, I don't love it. I'll just go back and double click in the swatch pattern itself, click, click, change something. The dimensions a little bit, and then click done. And now I like it better. So you can tweak it endlessly as you build it. Some people make much more complicated drawings. Here's shapes that are fluid, maybe drawn with the pen tool. They've also already been given a transparency of multiply. I'll show you that. Pretend you drew all these shapes and set them to multiply. That way, when they overlap each other, you sort of see these blendings of color. But let's pretend that we want that to become a fill pattern. I'll select the whole thing. You know the drill. Drag and drop it in, deselect it, then double click to edit it. Here it might look more interesting if we tighten up the spacing. And when a part of the object hangs off the left or the right, that's where it repeats and basically shows up again on the other side of this square pattern. So I'll squeeze this together until I see what looks to me like a nice dense spacing. I'm just holding the down arrow key to walk it together. Doing this hastily, but pretend you like it. I'll call this lava lamp. I'll click done. Come on out of this pattern generator. And let's see what that looks like when we apply it to a fill. I'll just click on it now that I've spaced it. And needs a little bit of work, but you see the basic approach to how to make a pattern. If you give a lot of careful thought to what you draw, you can make what looks like an interesting weave pattern as a fill. And so pretend we drew this three-cornered arrow system here and then duplicated it a lot. And I've selected the whole group, drag it in there, deselect it. Want to edit it, so I double click to get to the pattern generator. And here again, we can push things close together until it looks like they're in alignment. And I'm just changing these numbers really quickly. And I'll call that a weave. And name it and click done. And exit out of the pattern editing mode there. And I'm spacebar dragging over here to see if I select this shape and apply it. Let's see what it looks like. And you're pretending you just adore that one too. Let's do some more examples, shall we? That's the basic idea of how you get a pattern fill started. Of course, some people would just rather just Google it and download it. You can, there's tons of that out there. Other people in Illustrator also know that there is a library button in the bottom corner where they could simply go to patterns and actually preload a bunch of ones that are already in here. Maybe you don't want to make up your own, but you would just like to play around with what's pre-built in the box. Beautiful. This makes a non-persistent second swatch panel, which if you like it a lot, you can tell to be persistent, which means always show up in Illustrator when you start Illustrator. That's what that word means. Or you can dismiss it away if it's only something you want, just briefly. But that's the idea of making pattern fills, and I'm moving rather briskly. I'm going to close this. And open up another example. We're making pattern fills. Once you've built a pattern, it might be nice to scale it up or down. In other words, not the artwork, but the pattern itself. And that's not real obvious how you do that. But pretend you drew this picture of this young woman and she's wearing some clothing. Now the black tool has now clicked on this outline shape of the jacket. And let's pretend that you already went through these steps that I showed you and you've built some patterns. It would be as simple as simply selecting your jacket outline and clicking to change the design of the fashion that the cartoon figure is wearing. Well, that's a good color. Let's keep that one. Now, the other question, though, is how do you transform the pattern to make it larger or smaller? That's done in the transform panel in a well-hidden place in Illustrator. So I'll leave this object selected, but in the transform panel, we'll go to the panel menu button, fly out. We'll go to transform the pattern only, click. And maybe what I'll do is I'll make these waves a little bit smaller. I'll make it to say 80% of what it used to be. And I'll hit Command Enter or Control Enter, which causes it to scale this way and that way in the same degree. And you can see that it's smaller. Did it get smaller? I'll undo it, Control Z or Command Z, and you can see it scaling. I'll make it much smaller. I'll make it 30% by typing it in the transform panel. Command Enter is a shortcut. I use a lot of shortcuts in Illustrator. And now here's a much finer pattern in the clothing. But that's how you do it. If you want to make the pattern you made, instead of having it big or small, you can say how big or small it scales to. But if you do that, look out. In the transform panel, be sure to visit here again and set it back. It'll stay that way otherwise, and you'll wonder why you can't scale a shape or to be a smaller shape. We'll close that out. And we'll open up something else. Here's some pop art, an example of a popular motif, or at least it was popular a couple of years ago. Let me see if I can bring this up. Put that back. Now I'll take this stick figure and put it here. And I'll push this one. This is all vector. By the way, Command Y, Control Y. You can see that it's vector outlines, can't you? And we'll put that there. And we'll just crowd all this artwork in here like this. And select them all. And again, you know the drill. Throw it into swatches, right? So we'll just drag and drop it in there. What we'll do is we'll double click it. And we'll change the spacing until we like the density of it. Maybe too dense. What you can also do is continue to work with your art that's in here. In other words, you can click on things. I could click this and Option or Alt drag that over there, and the pattern changes in real time. Or I could take this one and repeat it up here with a Option drag. In other words, I want to get that a little more random looking. Or maybe even scale it down. The things you can do on the artboard in Illustrator, you can do here in the pattern generator. I think you get the idea, but in this way, I can build myself an homage to Herring's work. And click Done and back out of the generator. And I'm going way too fast, but I want you to see a lot of subtly different moments in all of these examples. When I go back here, having adjusted it, I can put that, drag and drop it right there. So you get the idea. You can make some interesting things, including this pop art treatment that you might see in an art gallery. I'll close this up and give you another example. Pattern fills, that's nice. We also can make pattern brushes. Here's how that's done. I'll go into another example file. A lot of times when I make a pattern brush, I want a certificate. So here's a classic example of a certificate. It's very dressy. but it needs a little bit more ornamentation around the outer edge of the certificate. Pretend that's what you'd like to do as well. And to speed this demo up, what I'll do is zoom in a little bit and show you that I've pre-drawn this as well as that, and that's going to pattern around the edge. So again, it starts with dropping it into swatches. So pretend you drew these little circles, but then drag and drop the group of it, Command G, Control G for grouping. And again, you pretend you drew those simple shapes and grouped it together, and you drop it in. And you deselect that. Now these two could be renamed. If you go into options, swatch options, you could rename it directly here instead of double clicking it, because I don't want it to be a fill of a region this time. I want it to be a brush. Now fills apply to the interior of an object, but brushes apply to the outer stroke edge. So we'll call this one certificate 1. I'll go to this one, go to swatch options, which I think you can also option click, but we'll go to call that cert 2. Now, that's half the work. I really want a brush to pattern this edge. So I'm done with swatches. Here again, it's never really abundantly clear in Illustrator where do you go next, but you did your prep work in swatches, building yourself named pieces of fill object. But now you got to move to step 2 for a pattern brush and go to the brush panel of Illustrator. I'm clicking on the new brush button, the little plus sign down at the bottom. And based on what's here, you can have your choices. I want a pattern brush to make a artwork distributed around the edge. I'll click OK. And I'll call it certificate and just basically define what I want to be around the edges. Cert 1 at the corner. Cert 2 maybe for the run along the edges. And here I could make a cert corner, cert 1 again. And if it were an open path, probably cert 1. And if the other end of the open path, maybe cert 1. But we have a closed path around our certificate. So I could give it a variety of changes, but a lot of times I make it fixed, and I could scale it even here, but I'll come back and do that in a minute. I'll click OK and just apply it to this existing stroke. So the black tool of Illustrator selects the stroke, which is a plain black stroke, and I want to replace that plain black stroke with my fancy pattern brush. So here we go. In brushes, I would just click on it, and it would apply it in place of. Ooh, that's pretty. Now, if I feel like I need to tweak it larger or smaller, I will come back to the brush, double click it. Maybe I would like to scale it a little larger, maybe to 120%. I'll click OK down here, and the whole thing will update. Yeah, Illustrator wants to know, you changed that brush. Do you want to apply it to what you just made? Yes, you do. So apply to strokes. And that's the best thing you've drawn today. It looks so fancy. Pattern brushes. You draw a little something, put it in swatches, build the brush. I'll do that again. Here's another example. We'll do basically the same thing so you can memorize it. Here comes the mystery machine here. Now this will be the corner of the pattern brush, and this will be along the run of the pattern brush. So pretend you drew a butterfly. Pretend you drew this group of little flower heads, which are very simple shapes. But let's put it into swatches. That's step 1, isn't it? Drag and drop that in, boom. Drag and drop the butterfly in there too. That'll be both our pieces. We'll deselect. Now that's going to be new pattern swatch 10 or 11. Now a lot of times what I'd like to do is rename that with swatch options, and I'll call it flowers, and then I'll rename this one in swatch options. Actually, I'll name that probably butterfly, right? Now they're prepped, they're deselected here. It's time to build the brush. Again, it's this little plus sign. I'm going to set myself up as a new brush, a pattern brush. There's 5 kinds of brushes. We'll click OK. We'll call it the butterfly edge, and again, just choose the artwork. Now, what's happening here in this drop down is it's looking at all your swatches and it shows them here. So choose that one. We'll scroll here and we'll choose flowers. Other corners, will make that also a butterfly. And if it were an open path, we would probably put the butterfly again, or some other artwork that you made. We set that at the start or the end. And we don't have an open path, we have a closed rectangular path to put our dressing around. And pretending all other things are good here. Interesting moments down in here, but just to give you a quick demo, we'll click OK. And then let's apply it to this existing brush stroke. This is a rectangle with a black stroke. And now we'll just click on this applied artwork. Beautiful. If there are no sharp corners, like on this rounded corner here, you'll tend to only see the flowers, because the way you defined it was that the butterfly should show up at sharp corners. So this is a rounded corner, therefore it never shows the butterfly in this pattern brush. Pretend that that's not in there twice. I was supposed to have removed that for this demo. But that's how you do that. Pattern brushes. Other people know to go and Google that and download other people's collections of brushes. Or you also might know, again, that the brushes panel in the bottom left corner has a library of pre-made stuff that comes in the box when you get it installed. And so you might go here to the library and you might like to get borders, geometric or novelty. Some of these are beautiful, some of these are really ugly, but you could try out different ones. Maybe you prefer coffee cups running around the edge of it. But there's a lot of things pre-built in Illustrator. If you know to go bring open the library button, it's both here and it's also in the upper corner. There's also access to libraries as well. Also, idiosyncratically, Illustrator refers to any other Illustrator file as a library. Takes a bit of getting used to. In other words, you can draw something you built in another file directly into this file. I'm going to close this example and move on. That's how you make pattern brushes. Draw something, whatever you draw, drop it into swatches panel, then build your brushes panel and choose pattern brush, and then apply it to some stroke or draw with it with the pen tool. I usually like to draw the shape first, then apply the brush to it, rather than try to draw it live, which is taxing on Illustrator. Now, the next topic is a scatter brush. We'll do pretty much very similar steps in Illustrator. So watch this. Here comes another example. A scatter brush is excellent for when you need to draw a lot of one object and you just need to have a multitude of them. This is one approach to it. Here's my cruise ship poster artwork. And maybe if you're looking closely there, you can see that there's a little golden yellow star there that's in the sky. But what would really be nice is if it actually had, lock that text down. It'd be nice if we had a lot of stars scattered across the sky. So how do you do that? Well, you probably drew it. You got your star shape tool out. But pretending that we already did that, leave it selected. I'll zoom in on this so you can see it. So there's a star, but you need many. But if it is selected, head on into the swatch panel, drop it in there, go to brushes, build yourself a new brush. This time, because it's selected, it gives you the opportunity to make a scatter brush, and we'll name it stars. Now, what's nice is if you set it up to be very random, and I'll let it make 50% to 100% stars, and I'll make it spacing between 50 and 100%, and I'll let it scatter randomly left and right, minus 50. I'm just putting in numbers here. And the rotation, I'll let it even rotate it from minus 45 degrees to 45 degrees. So it could be rotating your copies of it. And I'm doing that quickly. And let's see what it looks like when we draw some stars in here. So I don't really need this guy anymore. I'll put him over there. But instead, what I'll do is I'll pick up the pen tool. Or even easier, I could pick up the, no, I think I'll make it hard. I'll do the pen tool. I'm going to drag, and drag, and drag, and drag, and drag, and drag, and drag to make curves, and drag, and maybe finish up right there. Shift X, I usually don't stop to see whether I'm stroke or fill, but I'll also command click away or control click away. And the black tool has this path selected, and I'll just simply add the star to it. Now, if that's not random enough, I can double click the star pattern generator and put in different numbers. I'll just change something. And click OK. Each time I apply it, it's going to generate something new. You get the sense of that. I'm going to close that. That's a scatter brush. You can tinker around with how far it scatters it by changing the scatter amount. Apply to stroke? Sure. That looks a little more random. Pretend you love it. I'm going to close that example. That's how you make a pattern brush. I'm heading off into some more complex things. 3D effects are rather nice. And I'm opening up a way to show the 3D effects that are built into Illustrator. Now, to be really correct about it, Illustrator is a 2D drawing software that can simulate 3D. So if I take this artwork here and rotate it, it would be Effect, Menu, 3D, and Rotate. And you can see that as I change these numbers, you can see the square moving to represent it, and you can see it rotating in space. That's nice. Or maybe you'd like view 3D or effect 3D. Maybe you'd also like to not only rotate it, but extrude it and bevel it. And so here you can see you have that same rotation ability, but also some extrude ability. So I'll change that to 30 points deep. And just so you can see it rotating, I'll change that a number in there. I'll just drive it. And that's the 3D rotate and extrude. And the bevel could be set to a slight edge, like this beveled off edge here. Starts to make Illustrator highly taxed for RAM. Sometimes the screen will go away like it is right now on mine, but eventually it will re-render it and it'll eventually get done. These are parts of Illustrator that are RAM intensive, and they don't necessarily work really well. I think I'll just take off that bevel. That was a bad example to work from there. And I'll click OK. Let's try this one, Effect 3D. And I'll just manually rotate this square, because you can also drive your numbers this way just by dragging it. And I'll click OK. It's simulating 3D in 2 dimensions. I'll do one more. You can barely see it because it's gray, but this is the half an outline of a can. It runs across this way, down that way, across this way, but we'll revolve it. Effect 3D revolve. I chose the color gray so that it looks like an aluminum can. If I really want to push it at the farthest edges, I could go into more options and change the lighting. And everything slows down enormously. If we're having this much trouble having it generate that, now that worked then you might have a little bit of RAM left to map some art onto the can. And so I'd like to go looking for a certain surface. It starts with the interior surfaces and gradually ends up on the outside, maybe this one. But if you made artwork and turned it into a symbol in Illustrator, you could map that onto the can. Must not be that surface. Maybe it's this surface. There it is. And it's a can of suds. There you go. And you're using a 2-dimensional drawing program, mapping art that pretend you drew that logo. And I even drew a little pull tab there for the top of the can. But that's how you revolve a shape. And whenever it is that you apply it under effects, later on you must go visit it again at the appearance panel. There it is. If you want to tweak it, you tweak it here in the appearance panel. You don't go back up to the top. Or if you don't want it, you can turn off that and it just reverts right back to its actual drawn shape. Other things you could do is drag the effect into the trash can to remove it. Whoops, I need to have it selected. Drag it into the trash can to take it away again. So that's how you revolve things, but it is not a true three-dimensional software. You are faking it in a very sophisticated way. Sometimes we make product packaging. It's a package, and this package is a rectangle or a square. And a lot of times what you'll do is you'll actually draw it flat, like this box of Tic Tacs that I drew here. But I'll take an action, and actions are really difficult. They take a lot of patience to work out. But I made this action, and I'd like to have that turn into a trimetric isometric view. So let's see how far it gets. It's a bit imperfect, but I'll play my action, which means I recorded my steps. I'll play it. And it starts distorting and shearing and rotating it. A limitation of actions is it can't really keep a certain corner point. So when you're done, you have to move it to make what looks like a product package. Still, if you'd like a copy of that action, get in touch with me. I'll send that over to you. There are things that actions cannot do in Illustrator, but it can save you a lot of step and repeat time by using actions. Just like in any program, it records what you do and then you tweak it until you get it right. I'll show you one more. Here's a part of Illustrator that is so code intensive, so RAM intensive, it may or may not work on your system. But a very mysterious place to work in is in the perspective grid. Now, an isometric is a sort of a cheat of perspective, but this one's a little bit more, or it's trying to do a more thorough job of getting a vanishing point. So if I go to the View menu of Illustrator and turn on the perspective grid, now I've already worked out where I want the perspective grid to be. All of its horizon, vanishing points, and corners are all tweakable. But once I do that, I have to switch from the black selection tool to a specialty black selection tool called the perspective selection tool. And I'll click one of these little widget planes, and then I'll click on, say, this shape. And when I start dragging it, it puts it in perspective. I'll deselect that. I'll do this plane. I'm clicking the little widget to show that side. When I use this specialty tool to select the previously drawn group that I've already prepared, but you should always draw flat first, but then turn it on, select it, put it into place, and see if you can get it. Quite sophisticated. I'll do it one more time. I'll deselect. I'll select the third plane of this three-dimensional plane, and then I'll click on this shape and start to drag it. And then I'll attempt to also scale it. I get mixed results with this gadget. It's also hard to align things, and things are very complex with lots of shapes, will take a bit of time. But you can see here that this one is using a more honest three-dimensional vanishing point. But again, you can do it. Now I'll press Command-Shift-I or Control-Shift-I, and that hides that. I'll press Command-semicolon. And I did it in a hurry, but I made what looks to be a realistic perspective with this generator. It's not for the faint of heart. it takes a little bit of practice to get good at the perspective grid tool. Close that out. Here's my last one. And where did it go? Let's see, we did scatter brushes, we did 3D text and shapes. And let's warp some things just as a last bit here. And I'm looking for my file. Here we go. These are much larger files. I hope you can still see my Illustrator. And let me just show you a couple of interesting quick moments that gives you an art look that kind of harkens back to 1960s psychedelic posters, such as this one that I made. And if you look carefully, woven through the headdress, it actually says Netcom Learning, but it's all seriously twisted in a sort of a late 60s psychedelic poster sort of way. Well, how's that done? Well, when you're working with shapes, it's very simple, really, once you see it. I need to select a shape to distort into, select the shape that will be distorted, and these two, they have to be the round shape above in layers. So if you observe that simple rule that the round shape is the distortion shape, it has to be above in layer stack. And all you do is Command Option C. And to further make it look like, and I was trying to redraw the Netcom Learning logo just in a rough approximation, so forgive me for that. But I'll also change the transparency to a multiply, or maybe better, an overlay. Looks pretty close, but that's warping it. It's also called envelope distort. Looks like this again. If this shape is above the text, I'll try to go to layers. Select these two. And just object envelope distort, make with top object. I used a shortcut for that. We'll do it again with this shape and this lettering. As long as your lettering is south of it, like this chosen selection here, then it's I seem to have broken that one. Let's try it again. We could also do this. Maybe I better close out these other files. These two objects are selected, and we're going to do an Shift, Option, Command W. And these are pre-made warp shapes that you can adjust any number of ways. They're like presets in a way, and you're pretending you like that. One last one here. I'll go into layers to help me select these things. Oh, no wonder I'm in the wrong selection tool. No wonder I was having such a hard time. I'm going kind of fast here, everybody. Sorry about that. But if I were to use the black tool, the correct tool, and shift click on this object, one last way to distort an envelope of shaping is to go to Object, Envelope Distort, and this one's called Make It with a Mesh. Now, the Mesh tool is a wonderful thing in Illustrator, but with this case, it's slightly different. You're just meshing the shape by tugging on things. And I would use the Mesh tool to distort just portions of the lettering. Not the color, which is what the Mesh tool really does, but in a mesh envelope, you might like to just distort the shapes of the letters to some degree. And there you have it. That's a very rapid tour, everyone, of a lot of the features of Illustrator. Many times they are idiosyncratic, RAM intensive. One doesn't necessarily even explain what do you do next, but Illustrator is amazing because yes, you can draw anything and everything once you figure out how to do it. But that's just a teaser session, everyone, to go along with, hopefully you'll sign up for our Netcom Learning classes and spend some time with me and learn these things with great depth. And now maybe what we could do is turn it back over to you to ask questions.
Thank you so much. We will be getting to our questions, but real quickly, we're going to take a moment. So now's the time to kind of gather your thoughts, get your questions into the question panel. We're going to hear real quickly from Eliza, and she is going to tell us about some of the upcoming webinars and promotions related to today's webinar. Eliza, are you with us? Hey.
Hi. Thank you so much, Mike. Can you send me some of those graphics? I want to make like cell phone covers and, you know, laptop decals and everything. That would be so cool.
Of course.
Really. So I do want to ask you something, Mike. So when you go ahead and you create all of these things in Illustrator, and you said this was rapid, and you showed so many things. In a regular class, right, when you do these classes for Illustrator and so on and so forth, what happens at that point of time? I want to be able to understand that how much of depth do you go into? Do you kind of like walk the learners through as to how this should be done, even when it comes to the color palette of choosing things? Because Illustrator, if you think about it, it's all art. So if that is the case, then how do you, how slow do you take when you're doing these classes?
Yeah, in a real all-day class, we do go much slower than here where I'm showing off a bit. We explain every panel, every tool, and I work with the file, and the learner also has downloaded the files. They're working right along with me, and it's at a comfortable pace, not racing along like I was doing here.
So it's like, you know, everybody downloads their own files, the artwork that they want to work on, and it's probably different kind of people who come into your class, right? There must be artists, there must be graphic designers. What are the types
of marketing department people?
Marketing department people, absolutely. So that's like when it comes to organizations, right? A lot of people think about it, hey, this is the Adobe Creative Cloud, and this is only for the marketing people, or this is only for designers. What would you say that something like Adobe Illustrator can be? What else can it be used for?
Well, for a lot of people, their main content is headed for the web and for social media. But a lot of times what we do is we draw elemental line art like this, logo art, in Illustrator, and then export it out as JPEGs and PNGs and put it into social media. That's a lot of what we do with it. The classic use of Illustrator is artwork that gets combined with projects in InDesign, books and magazines. Logos, we love to do vector logos in Illustrator. And another area of industry is food product packaging, is a lot of times done in Illustrator.
I've also seen Illustrator and Photoshop actually mixed with other products such as Revit, Autodesk Revit, AutoCAD, and all of this artwork and everything. You know, when people get into project management, people get into building design, architecture, and so on and so forth. All of this artwork, 3D designs, and so on and so forth, kind of like seep into those products as well. I would like to thank you so much for taking the time out today and doing this for us, Mike. I really, very grateful. So everyone, thank you so much for joining today and taking this time out of listening to Mike and, of course, myself now. So just to take you through as to what the new promotions are and how you'd be able to find all different courses when it comes to Adobe Illustrator, I would like to take you to our website. Very simple, www.netcomlearning.com. Mike had our name all over his artwork. As a matter of fact, he even made our logo, come to think about it. So you come to www.netcomlearning.com at any given time. If you are looking for an Adobe course, all you need to do is just either write Adobe over here, or if you scroll up and down, you'll see that we are an Adobe Authorized Training Center, as in we only provide authorized courseware, we only provide authorized trainers for your training needs. So if you want to come to Adobe, you could just select Adobe from here, or you could scroll down if you're looking for a particular certification in Adobe, being Creative Cloud, there's XD credentials now, so on and so forth. You can actually get into learning Adobe by certifications as well, if that is something that is important to you in your career path. So to bring you back to Adobe at any given point of time, whenever I want to look for an Adobe product, I just look for Adobe in our section. And once I do that, it kind of like brings a plethora of courses that we have for Adobe. Now, it's not just the Illustrator, because the Creative Cloud Suite, you're talking about 20 plus different applications that you can actually just use into the Creative Cloud Suite. And that comes with InDesign, you have Photoshop, you have Illustrator, so many, you have Flow. There's one that actually works on the fonts as well, as a matter of fact. And there's so many different options that you can actually learn into the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite. If you want to come also to our Adobe page, you can just click on Adobe over here, and this is going to bring you to our main Adobe page. What you will find over here are our popular products, and these are by popular demand. Now, I'm not saying that this is popular just because I like them. It's because this is what most of the organizations and most of our learners are interested in when it comes to Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Experience Manager, Adobe Dreamweaver, because now we're kind of like walking into the Marketing Cloud, Adobe Marketing Cloud as well. You also have your popular courses over here. You have Premiere Pro CC. Now, you know, with the pandemic, everything moving virtually, everything moving online, all of that came into picture. A lot of e-learnings came into picture. Where do we make these e-learnings? How do I create these e-learnings? Where do I put the artwork in these e-learnings for? How do I make them interactive? So Adobe has different array of products, and I'm not here to sell Adobe products, though I'm a huge fan of them. I'm not here to sell Adobe products, but learning those products, like what Mike showed today in the Illustrator, I could have Illustrator, but I probably wouldn't even know how to use it. So that is something that you want to get into, and you want to make sure that you're learning all of this. But to bring you back to our promotions, I would say mostly for organizations, what most of the organizations nowadays are doing are they're looking for learning passports. Because it is never one person who needs to learn. As teams, we collaborate into efforts. It is not only a one-man work. It is not a one-man project, which is why if you look into our learning passports, I'm going to take you there. One quick moment. So once you go into our learning passports, what you will be able to see are different kind of passports. Now, it's all about savings, right? It depends on how many people want to take the training or how many trainings do you want to take. What is the training budget that you want to give yourself or your organization has given to you? And how do you want to spend it? Is it going to be only with Adobe courses? Is it just about a department? Is it just about one person? Is it about a specific technology, or is it about various technologies? So you can look into our Learning Passport page and look into different kind of passports that you can actually get for your organization. You could watch the video over here, talks about the Learning Passport, so on and so forth. And you could learn more about it. Another thing that I want to take you through is the Netcom Unlimited. And this by far is one of the biggest savers that I have seen. People purchase multiple courses and then they end up paying $10,000 to $20,000 for those courses. Whereas now you have Netcom Unlimited with unlimited ELT, which is e-learning, on-demand training, and unlimited VILT for a very low price. Of course, this is for organizations, so it goes by licensing, and then you get further discounts on it too. So if you want to go through that and you want to see what are the other courses, what are the different types of courses which are in Netcom Unlimited, as you can see, Adobe is the very first one. You have Adobe up top. If you select Adobe Illustrator, Captivate, InDesign, all for a very low price of $24.99. I might sound salesy today, but it's just that I'm so excited about it. I'm sorry about that. I apologize. So just go through the Netcom Unlimited option as well for your organization. Go through the savings, the Learning Passport. And if you want to come in and you want to watch any more of our webinars, just as good as Mike's, I would say just come into our resources section. And once you do, we have webinars going on different kinds of technologies. You have one coming up on networking. You have security, data and AI. You have business processes, business applications. Just pick a webinar, register for it whenever you want to. And if you want to watch the webinar that Mike just did today, give us 24 hours and it is going to be a part of our on-demand webinars right over here under all recorded webinars. You should be able to access Mike's webinar. So that's all that I had. I'm very sorry I took too much time today, and back to you, Lee.
Well, it's hard to stifle that kind of enthusiasm. It was really an awesome webinar, and we're so grateful that Mike joined us. We are going to just take a couple quick questions, and unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to all of them today just because we've got to wrap up. We did have a comment in here first that says, great meetup. I'm a 20-year vet and was able to learn something today. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and have a great day. We have a question where they asked, sorry, what?
I'm glad they came.
Yes, I am too. It just shows that you can, no matter where you're at, you can still learn if you're open to it. Our next question, they're asked, will those patterns be available once again, or once you close out this Illustrator file, or do you have to drop them into the swatches panel each time you open a file?
They're actually in the swatches panel each time you open that file. So everything in Illustrator is document centric. So if you built the pattern in there, it'll be in that file, and you can share it by copy and paste, one of the simplest ways, to other files.
Wonderful. Is it possible to alter the artwork in pre-built brushes?
Yes, because the pre-built brushes are based on pre-drawn art. So if you pull that back out of the swatch pattern, swatch panel, and drop it on the artboard, you could change it, and therefore you could alter the artwork itself. Yes.
Wonderful. Let's see. And then, do you have any good references for learning keyboard shortcuts for Illustrator?
Yes, the best one is my website. It's filled with endless keyboard shortcuts. But maybe they could send an email to you, and then I could send them one of our shortcut sheets.
Yes, that would be great. And you can email us at webinar@netcomlearning.com. Let's see, do we have any others? I think you already answered that. We will take one more question. So, and then we are going to go ahead and wrap up. Can text objects have more than one stroke or fill?
Absolutely. It's much easier to actually see it than describe it.
Do you want me to share the screen with you?
Yes, I'm still in Illustrator. If you could share the screen, it'll take 30 seconds.
Okay, let me pull that up. You should be able to share now.
And you're looking at my Illustrator. I'll just select one piece of text, one text object. And if you work not in the type tool, but mysteriously in the appearance panel, this is where you can add 1 stroke, 2 strokes, or 3 strokes, and more than one fill. And then it's just a matter of going back and redefining it. Like for example, here's the fill, which I'll drag down below under the strokes. I'll change its color to some beautiful color, pretend you like it. And then here I'll just edit the strokes. It looks like multiple strokes when they're stacked up on each other in the appearance panel. Now my color choices are horrendous here, forgive me for that, but I'm doing that rather quickly. And for example, if the fill were brought back up on top of the strokes, then it looks like these strokes are moving outwards from the edge, whereas really the fill is covering it up. Now, if you would rather have 2 fills, maybe what you would really like here is a color tint of a fill. And then the other fill could be some sort of pattern. Otherwise, why would you have 2 different colors, right? So if you were to put in, say, that, there's your fill. Now you can't see it until you take this guy and change his transparency. The opacity could be set to overlay, which allows you to put, say, this golden overlay over top of another fill of a pattern. So it can be very confusing, something to play with, but it all happens in the appearance panel. And here, just because that's an excellent question, play around with the pre-made library, especially of graphic styles, and you'll just learn just oodles of stuff related to that. Play around with graphic styles because there's a bunch of them pre-built in here. There's a good full answer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I can tell that we could spend another hour at least just going through the rest of the questions, but unfortunately we do have to wrap up. We really appreciate your time today, and we are going to go ahead now and launch a quick poll to find out how many people might be interested in taking some additional training. In addition to what we presented today, we have a lot of informative webinars coming up, so please go to www.netcomlearning.com/webinars/ to register for any of those. We want to thank you all for joining us. If any of you do come up with any additional questions, please feel free to send them to us at webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. We hoped you all found today's webinar informative, and we really look forward to seeing you back here with us very soon. Also, please feel free to tell your friends and your colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Once again, thank you everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.